Do it. And on the way into work today, I know her really well, and she's a trooper, obviously. And I said, hey, just in case, why don't you do me a favor and type up the 5 basic teachings of unity, so I have at least something to go by. So, how many of you know improv? That's a good thing. I'm a professional. I could do this. And so I gave her permission to take care of herself. How many of you struggle with that sometimes in life? Is giving yourself permission to not be everything to everybody, and give yourself permission to heal. And so that's what Eliza's done. She's just given herself permission to heal. So, yeah. I was thinking about it's August 31st, and we're celebrating Labor Day weekend. It seems like that's about as early as I can come, I guess. Tomorrow, can you believe the summer's like it's September tomorrow? How did that happen? It's crazy. And so the opportunity for Labor Day is an opportunity that comes to us from really acknowledging, and it was all about acknowledging, giving thanks to our labor force, our workforce in the United States. And so we do that, and it's a good thing to acknowledge all the work that we do out there and all the things that are done to make sure everything works. And when you go into a grocery store and you pick up what you pick up, well, there's a lot of people that make that happen. When you throw on your light switch, you just kind of take it for granted, that, oh, there's a light. And boy, when it's not on, what life is. It's interesting. So all the things, the behind the scenes, for all the people that do what they do to make our life easy. And so we come together today and we celebrate that and we honor that. And so also what I'd like to do today is celebrate all the labor, all the work that it takes to make a shift in consciousness, to live a higher state of consciousness, to make a difference, to make a willingness to get out of those sometimes ruts that we live in, those grooves that no longer serve us. I don't know if you've ever been in a rut before in a groove. Man, I have. And some people say a rut's just a grave with the ends kicked out. Been there and done that. Just kind of in that. And so we can rise to a higher awareness of truth. We can get out of that low life experience that we sometimes get ourselves into. And we can celebrate all the work that we've done. How many of you have ever had an experience that happened to you and it happens to you again, but you see it differently? That's the moment you realize you've done the work. The moment that you see the same experience coming to you, but all of a sudden you react differently. You don't get quite as upset as you got before. You see it a little differently. You see God in the midst of it. You see that it's actually something that's going to work out. You know that with God all things are possible. You don't get buried in it, but you get lifted in it. And so it becomes not a tragedy, but a lifting experience and another mountaintop experience. And I was blessed to be the minister at our world headquarters for a while, and blessed to have relationships with the family, the Fillmores, who founded this movement. I was blessed to have in my life Louis E. Meyer, who was Charles Fillmore's best friend. And he is my daughter's godfather, who died at the age of 99. I was blessed to spend time with him. He was emeritus at my church, my first church in Orlando. And we have some folks here from my first church from Orlando. Wasn't he a delightful man, Louis E. Meyer? He was the real deal. Louis E. Meyer was the real deal. So I was blessed to hear the stories and how unity came about and why it was so important, why so many people gathered to unity, because it gave them an opportunity to take the high watch. And it gave us an opportunity to really look at our lives that we're not less than, but we're actually more than we think that we are. And Charles Fillmore and Myrtle Fillmore brought that to the forefront of this consciousness on this planet at that time, so that we could grow into becoming something magnificent. Jesus said, these things that I do, you could do so much more. And so we want to be about that. And so our unity principles, the first principle that we teach is God is the source and creator of all. There is no other enduring power. God is good and present everywhere in any situation that you find yourself in. How many of you have found yourself in sticky-wicky situations before? Yikes, stripes. I saw one today. I was driving to work, to church. My wife and I bought a home in get it right, but I think it's right. Rowlett, Texas. Coming down Highway 66, which turns into forest. And we could see some activity up front, slowed way down. Wasn't a lot of cars there, but there was some police and different things. And as we went by this situation, what I experienced was a car that had exploded. Somebody had hit a telephone pole and missed a jog in the road and flew off the ground. And the pole was down and the car literally exploded. There was a tire over here and a bumper about 200 yards away. Hardly anything left of the original car. And it took my breath away because the odds of somebody probably lost their life in that accident. Wee hours in the morning. And it just made my heart just like, oh, and it just made me a little woozy to my stomach. And then as we drove a little bit more, I started thinking about, that life situations that occur on planet Earth. And yet what we know is no matter what happens to us, no matter what situations you find yourself in, there's only one presence and one power active in my life and in the universe. And when we rise to a higher state of consciousness, when we begin to see that everything speaks to the truth, and we have our situations, so we have our notices in life, and we notice the situations that are occurring, and yet what we know beyond any shadow of a doubt, that God is there, and truth is there, and we rise to this occasion. And this is what, to me, true Labor Day is really all about, is honoring all the work that we do, or all our spiritual work, so they can rise above those situations and see the good in all things. I had a friend of mine, her name was Vi Wolf, and she was like Louis E. Myers. She was just a radiant being, probably in her early 60s. She was in Orlando. I don't know if you remember Vi and Bill. Bill was our treasurer when I first got there. She was the most incredible woman I've ever met. She's just a real deal. Her consciousness, she was, when you're in her presence, she never spoke ill of anyone. She was alive and vivacious and just someone you just wanted to follow home. She had it all. And then I got word that she had a disease called Lou Gehrig's disease. And this one's not a fun one, folks. This is the one where the mind stays intact and then your body or systems start closing down. The muscular system, the nervous system, eventually you die and you pass. And watching her in that, and at first I was so angry because I was like, how could someone who has that kind of a consciousness, so elevated, so sweet, so loving, have something like that show up in their life? And then I was, I remember meeting with her with tears falling and holding her, and she said, it's going to be just okay. She said, because I know that God will take care of me. Because she said there's only one presence and one power, God. And this presence and power is God, the good, omnipotent. And we affirm that each and every week. So regardless of the situations that you find yourself in, we know that God is the source and creator. Many of us draw paychecks from different places. We go to work, we get a paycheck. And I remember on my checking account, I used to put God as my source. You get a check from someone, but God's energy is filtering through that experience because God is our source of supply in all things. We are spiritual beings created in God's image, and the Spirit of God lives within each person. Therefore, all people are inherently good. All people are good. And so many times, a lot of us were told when we were children that we were a sinner, that we were born into sin. And then I would encourage you to maybe not go down that road unless you need to. But I will guarantee you, if you go down to the nursery and you go through our nursery and our youth ed and you look at all these wonderful little children or your grandchildren, there's one thing that you're for sure is they are awesome human beings. And there's no way someone convinced me they came here and that they're sinners and the only way they can get out of that, and you know how it works. These are children of God, of the Most High. And sometimes when I look in the mirror, I see my father or my grandfather, but inside of me, I'm still a kid. Aren't you? You're still children of God. When I was 14 years old, I was just about to start my 9th grade year. My brother and I were horsing around, and he broke my jaw in 2 places and gave me a concussion. Yeah, I deserved it, actually. See, in my house, he was 2 years older, so the thing was I was faster and quicker. But this time, that didn't matter. It got to me too fast. But nevertheless, I had this thing called water on the brain where there's a pool of blood that collects between the tissue and the skull. And so they had a concussion, and they go in, and when they were in there setting my jaw, they took the blood out, and they fixed what they needed to fix. And my mother had a theory. She said, she thinks that my mental was fine, but my emotional growth stopped at 14, and I think she's right. I'm real okay to stay 14, are you? Just don't get stuck in being a grown-up. The other thing I noticed while I'm on the subject, because I'm improv. I go anywhere I want to go. Another thing I noticed when I was little, 4 or 5 years old, is that, my life was pretty cool. I was out and about, and I had no fears and everything. But what I thought was all adults were like gods. My great aunt, my dad. I had no idea that adults were so messed up. Did you? I had no idea. Now you're an adult and you look at the political problems, you look at the social problems, you look at all the problems. I had no idea that I would grow up to have more problems than I had when I was 4 and 5. So, you don't need to grow up in the sense of growing out of a personal relationship with God. Children know who they are. We've all heard stories that infants and small children, they're coming into this experience called life, and their work is to try to figure out how to coordinate the body, how to get the food into the mouth, how it works, and just how to live on planet Earth. And somewhere along the way, because of the ancestors got some of it messed up, they take on those traits. And so what our job is what we celebrate today is our willingness to do it different, our willingness to grow spiritually, to take that walk into the high meadows so that we can really be open. Because one of the things that Charles and Myrtle Fillmore valued so much was a personal relationship with the God of their understanding. And that takes time, and it takes energy, and sometimes it takes work, because we have a tendency to want to slip back into those ruts and those grooves that no longer serve us. Number 3, we create our life experiences through our way of thinking. I think the number one problem in our country and in the world is that most people think and worry and fuss and put more energy on what they don't want. I know we don't do that, but put more energy and thought on what they don't want than what they want. Example, the movers showed up because I said I don't want you movers showing up at my new house on a Sunday because I go to church. So they showed up last night at 7 o'clock. And they got all this stuff, and so you're managing it best you can and everything. And so I don't know how this happened, but I have a couch with one of those not a recliner, but it's got a little chase in it that you can lay out in it. And one of the cushions is missing. Now, how in the world? So my mind went to, instead of trying to just know and affirm that it'll show up, it's probably in a box. They probably put it in a box. No big deal. I spent an hour trying to figure out what knucklehead lost my cushion. And how do you do that? I was standing right there when they wrapped the couch. What in the world? I was spending energy, prime example, because I'm a professional, of spending energy on what I didn't want. I really wanted to find the cushion. And so it's how simple you get sucked into, how simple it is. Because thoughts held in mind truly do produce after their kind. So what you think about, you become. So be mindful of your thoughts. And what are you thinking about in this very moment? Number 4, there is power in affirmation. There is power in affirmative prayer, which we believe increases our awareness of God. If I had a tool chest here, and it was said Unity Tool Chest, and I was to open it up, what I would pull out would be affirmative prayer. Our tool chest, what we teach, is affirmative prayer. When they came up with this concept, it was really about the idea of denial and affirm. We changed the word from denial because of the word that believes into the field now, the professionals use it for a different meaning. So we talk about release. We talk about releasing, instead of putting energy on what you want, release it, and then affirm what you really want. In recovery, in the 12-step program, they talk about surrender. and affirm. This is where the power lies. This is our prayer technique. I believe that it's important also to put in the middle. I release, I surrender, and then notice step back from it, having giving it no energy, and this has no power over me before I affirm. I want to release it. I want to make it just a notice that it has no power over me. The problem that we have, and I've shared this with you before, including myself, when I have a tendency to want to release something or surrender to something, I give a lot of energy to it. It looks like this. I want it to go away. And the universe is built on energy, and so when you put that kind of energy on something, guess what happens? It gives you more. So if you're trying to release like that, you're just going to get more. But if you release like pushing away a gentle cobweb, not like running into a cobweb with a spider running over your face, that's a panic attack. Not like that. But just move it like that. Gentle. And once you release it, you just stand in it and you look at it and you notice it. And you just said, that has no power over me. Because I know who I am. I'm a radiant child of God. I am a radiant child of God. Together, I am a radiant child of God. I'm heir to the kingdom. Together, I'm heir to the kingdom. And from that moment in which you stand in that holy presence of your own being, you declare the truth. And in that place you can, and when you affirm, you can put all the zim and the energy into it that you want. Our founder, Charles Fillmore, was just short of 94 years old when he passed. And he was sick. And he wrote out that famous affirmation that I've shared with you before. Many of you know it. I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm as I spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me today, this day. This was his affirmation. He wrote that affirmation because he was not feeling well, and he had things he wanted to do before he left to go to the other side. And if you've ever heard Charles Fillmore's voice, and you've heard me speak it like this too, when you hear Charles Fillmore's voice at Unity Village, he sounds just like Gabby Hayes. He does, doesn't he? You know, our Father that art in heaven, hallowed. He does. So when he got out of bed that morning, wrote that affirmation, when he slung that thing out of bed, he meant it. I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm as I spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me. Energy. At 93, energy to do the things that he needed to do. At 93, in 1948, was like living to be 110 today. He was doing the work that he needed to do with an energy. He was thinking about what he wanted to do, thinking about his personal relationship with God. Charles Fillmore was called the great American mystic because he was all about, a mystic means a person who goes directly to God. And so what he wanted us to do is to go directly to the source. He found direct route to the source, direct route, and also to his coach and mentor, Jesus Christ. And here we go on 4. There is only this prayer. There is power in affirmative prayer. And so that number 4 that we're just speaking about right here and right now is really what makes us unique. It's our tools. It's like we go to the job. We go to the job to heal, to transform, to revitalize, to pray for our dear friends who have asked us to pray for life and for wisdom and for light and for abundance of all things and for peace of mind. This is how we do it. Because we can't know the truth unless we can set aside false beliefs and anxiety and just stand in the truth of who we are. And knowledge of these truths, these spiritual principles, is not enough. We must live them. You know, most people come to church and want to hear a message, but do we really want to live that message? A story I read years ago that popped into my head this morning was about a young minister. He was a dynamic preacher, hired into a fundamentalist church in a small town where everybody in town went to the same church. Big parking lot, lots of people. And he gave a sermon of his life. He gave a sermon on love and compassion and to love thy neighbor. The commandment, love thy neighbor. The golden rule. And they loved him. And the deacons were so excited about the choice they made. Well, after church, he walked up into his office. That his office overlooked the parking lot. And they only had one way in and one way out. They had all these people trying to get out of the parking lot. They had forgotten everything he said. These were congregant members honking horns at each other, trying to cut in, waving at each other one finger at a time. He was in disbelief. He was in disbelief. He couldn't believe it. Didn't hear a word he had to say. Next Sunday, right, he comes in and gives the exact same talk. And the deacons go, wow, this is interesting. And he went back upstairs after that the second Sunday, and the same thing was going on. Same thing going on. Third Sunday. Same thing. Went upstairs, same thing going on. Finally, the deacons called him in a special meeting, called the board in, called them all in and said, you've got to give a different talk. Here's what he said. As soon as you get this one down, I will. Yeah. As soon as I get this one down, I will. So take what you need, apply it. Apply these spiritual principles. We must be willing to live them, to take them to that mountaintop experience and live the spiritual principles that will set you free. Get out of that ruts. Get out of the excuses. And take the high watch. God is there. There's only one presence and one power active in your life and in the universe. God, the good, omnipotent. God bless you. Amen.